Hey, in this video, I'm going to be talking through my Daniel Smith watercolor palette and highlighting not only the colors that I have inside, but even more importantly, why and how it affects my art so that you can apply it to your own watercolor palettes. I do tend to get a lot of questions about color choices that I make, and this is the palette in question, messy, but essentially I designed this palette because I was going to an art retreat and I knew that I would have a lot of time to paint, and so I wanted to pick colors that I would enjoy, that I would be familiar with, and that would serve the purpose of creating paintings that I would enjoy and color stories that I would enjoy. When it comes to the colors themselves, obviously I've made a video highlighting all the Daniel Smith watercolors that I had then and kind of talking about why I picked them, the different characteristics. And in this one, it was kind of curating that big list of colors that I have and curating it down to, initially it was meant to be 16, but I couldn't help myself. I added two half pans, so it's actually 18 colors. And then from there, I learned so much from this palette, from just using one palette continuously for a prolonged period of time and painting a lot, that I then learned lots of lessons that I could apply to other palettes that I use down the line, such as the Sennelier one, which I just love the color choices that I made inside that palette. I'll leave that video linked for you. And that was informed heavily by the lessons that I was learning from this Daniel Smith palette. So with no further ado, let's actually get started with what colors do I have in there. To start things off, we have Buff Titanium, which is PW6:1. It is, I like to describe it as a dirty white. It's a color that you can quite easily use to mute down other colors, and in part I have been enjoying painting coasts and the beach, and so I thought that this would be a really helpful color to have. In honesty, I didn't use it quite as much as I thought that I would. I've kind of lent towards a bit of a brighter palette, as you'll see in my artwork later on, but it's still a very helpful color to have, especially when it comes to using it for mixing and for creating softer, more delicate looking colors. The next color that we have here is Hansa Yellow Light, which is PY3. It is like your run-of-the-mill cool yellow. You will see it quite often in a lot of different palettes. You can make some really nice bright greens with it. You can mix it and make some bright oranges with it as well. And it's a nice yellow. Essentially, I can't quite fault it. So it is PY3, and this one is semi-opaque, as you can see. And what that means is that quite often if I paint over lines that I've created, then it kind of obscures it. I'll also be swatching these in my Etcher Everyday Sketchbook, which has 100% cotton watercolor paper, because I feel like that makes a big difference on how the colors behave and look as well. I will be sure to link everything down below in the description for you, and there is also a sale going on now, so I'll leave that linked too. More recently, I've actually found myself leaning towards a transparent palette, and that was something that I learned from this palette because as I was on my painting retreat, just painting so much non-stop, I found that actually I was using the same colors over and over, that I was making brighter mixes and darker darks with my transparent colors, and I ended up finishing 3 colors in this palette, and that was essentially as a result of really leaning into the colors that I was enjoying and the mixes that I was making. One of those colors was this one, which is Nickel Azo Yellow PY150. It is a color that I love across brands. I love it because, as you can see, it is transparent, like that black line isn't obscured at all, and it makes the most beautiful natural looking greens. It also makes nice bright oranges if you want, and delicate peaches if you want. So a color that I just use all the time is this Nickel Azo Yellow. And prior to that, I was using the color that I'm going to highlight next, which is Quin Gold, quite a lot, which is made up of P048 and PY150. So it does have that Nickel Azo Yellow inside it. But with time, I've realized that actually I like the Nickel Azo Yellow a lot. So I will bounce back and forth between these two. I use them interchangeably, but I find that the Quin Gold is a lot warmer. It leans a lot more orange, and then when you water it down, you can get it to a nice bright yellow, which is the Nickel Azo Yellow that we have underneath. The other thing that's kind of worth noting is that colors will vary quite a bit depending on the brand that you're using. And so one of the things that I also noted is that this nickel azo yellow tends to be warmer than other ones that I have used, and that instinctively means, look at that, that my greens will have a lot more of a natural tint to it, and you just have to kind of adjust accordingly. But yeah, I just love these two colors, if for nothing else, for the greens that they make. But I would take it a step further and say that with nickel azo yellow, one of the things that I love as well is the ability to glaze with it, to use it to kind of go over a color and add this really nice, lovely warmth over whatever it is that I've painted underneath it. So, and then because it's transparent, you can see it quite nicely underneath. Both of these are one of my favorites, and that's one of the first or key discoveries that I've made from using this palette, and that is that right now I am really loving using transparent colors. They just make nice, clean, easy mixes, and so nickel azo yellow was one of my go-tos. My mum sent me a meme basically asking what is one of the happy memories or happy parts of being a child, and I replied saying when I used to look forward to receiving post, aka before I started receiving bills. And that reminds me of why I love sending out Happy Mail, because it means that at some point you will get some mail full of watercolor dot cards, and some months I add bonuses like watercolor paper or art prints or a sticker or something that I feel will spread the joy and excitement of creating art. So these colors remind me of the golden watercolor dot card that I sent out, where I basically curated all the different PO48s and the different colors that basically look like sunshine in the tube, and I sent them out to my members. The Happy Mail tier is almost always fully booked, and I only open it for limited periods of time because there's only so much that I can create. That being said, it is open for the next few days, and so I just wanted to let you know, if you wanted to join the Happy Mail tier, be sure to do so. I will leave it linked in the description, and I do have other digital reward tiers as well, so you can get things like Zoom sessions if you want to chat and have art friends, or see exclusive behind the scene videos, or even videos like this where I can be a little bit more myself, a little bit more relaxed, and know that it's not going out to the whole internet. And one of the things that I am so proud of that I created, and I'll share a little bit later, is the watercolor workbook, and it is free to download for members for the next few days. So if you're looking for a happy arty place in the internet, if you were thinking about joining, today is the day. I'll leave my membership linked down below in the description. But continuing on, the next color that I picked, and this was purely based on I have it, I like the pigment, and why not try it, and that is Chrome Titanate Yellow, which is PBR24. I really like this color, like I like the hue, but as you'll notice as I'm going over this black line, it is quite semi-opaque, and it meant that when I was using it for the paintings, I kind of struggled using it a little bit. I found that my colors were getting muddy a little bit easier, that the mixes weren't quite as clean as I wanted them to be, and also I just couldn't use it in the same way that I was using the nickel azo yellow. That's not to say it's a bad color, like I absolutely love the way that it looks, it's just that I had to work with it differently. And the next color, similar kind of thing. And it's funny because before I went on this trip, I was very much enjoying opaque colors because they kind of remind me of, you know, gouache. And so I was really leaning into them. And now I've gone to transparent colors and using opaque colors to just add a few pops of color as opposed to for the bulk of the painting. And this color is another one that I absolutely loved, and as you can see it going over that black line, it is semi-opaque if not opaque, and this is Coral Reef, which is one of the new colors by Daniel Smith. It is PO73 and PW6, so that PW6 is the bit that is making it lean opaque, but it is just such a pretty pink, and the fact that it's such a bright pink and that it is opaque made me think that actually I probably wouldn't use it that much, but I have used it a lot. And if you haven't seen my Bologna video, if you have a look at the artwork that I created from there, you will see that it just featured very heavily, like it is a beautiful color. I've come up with a formula, and when I was putting together my Italy palette, I shared it in that video, where it comes to like making my ideal palettes. And it's a formula that I use all the time in one way, shape or form. And if you want me to go like in full detail, definitely be sure to check out that video. But to kind of briefly highlight, I like to think about the split primaries that I will actually use. So you will quickly notice that I don't have a warm red in this palette because I don't use it in my artwork. So I'll think of the split primaries that I will actually use, because that will mean that then I will be able to make a lot of mixes. And I enjoy mixing, so that's fine with me. Then the other colors are the colors that are, you know, fun, that you enjoy mixing, your favorites, colors that maybe don't make sense, but you enjoy having them. And if it wasn't in your palette, then you wouldn't necessarily enjoy painting with it as much. And for me, those are a must, because if it's not fun, what is the point of actually doing it? So coral reef was one of those colors for me. And in honesty, it just so happens that for me, the essential colors are also the primary colors. So nickel azo yellow is one of those colors that really, if it's not in my palette, or there isn't like a Quin Gold-esque color in my palette, probably not going to enjoy painting with it as much. And then the other one is this Quin Rose, which is PV19. It is beautiful. Now usually I tend to like a PR122 kind of color, which is a Quin Magenta. I feel like they're normally nice and bright, and in most brands that is what I go for. In Daniel Smith, my equivalent of that is Quin Rose, which is PV19. It's just a beautiful hue, and this is another one of the colors that I just ran out of and I had to buy more of during my trip. Think about the split primaries, your favorite colors that are hard to mix. I'll talk on them a little bit later. Colors that you need that are used as mixers, for example, like browns or other colors that maybe I don't tend to use that much in isolation, but I love using them in mixes. And as I say, definitely be sure to check out that video, because I kind of talk about it in more detail, and all these colors in one way or the other kind of fall into that. And then the other thing, especially if I'm using it as a palette to go outdoors or to go on a special trip, is I like to think about what colors am I actually going to see there? What colors am I going to need for the medium that I want to paint? What colors am I going to mix a lot of? And thus it just makes sense to have that color. This next one is PR122 Quin Lilac, and this again highlights just the difference between brands, the difference between colors, and just the fact that you can have the same pigment, but there are different variations and formulations of them, and so they look completely different. So this PR122 Quin Lilac is a lot deeper and darker and more leaning towards like maroon and lilac, as in like purple, as the name indicates, and it is stunning. And that's why I love to look at swatches as well, because if I just looked at the pigment, I would have thought, oh yeah, this is going to be like a Quin Magenta, whereas actually it is a lot deeper and darker. And then next one, this is a special one, another one that I actually finished and then topped up. So Quin Rose I finished and topped up twice. Nickel Azo Yellow finished and topped up 3 times. And then I have another color later on that I finished and topped up. Piemontite is a Primatech color, and I finished it and topped it up once. And this I use because it's beautiful and very unique. It granulates in a really nice way. Sometimes it leans quite pinky, like a pinky kind of brown. And oddly enough, it's a color that I would either use on its own as is, or the other thing that I was doing quite a lot actually is using it as a mixing color to make really nice grays by mixing it with my blues. And I can show you a couple of mixes later just so that you can see and kind of reflect on which colors you like most. But yeah, because it is a granulating color, the more water you add and the more you put it like on nice rough paper, set it down with lots of water and then leave it alone, the better. Basically, see what I'm doing and do the opposite. All this fiddling that I'm doing with it, not necessary. not necessary at all. So that is Piemontite, which is a Primatech color, so we don't get pigment information for it. So I definitely feel like this palette has a good balance of essential colors as well as fun colors. And if you're still watching, then you are most definitely a real MVP. Let me know that you're watching by telling me what your essential 3 colors would be for your palette, and then I'll know, you'll know, and everyone watching will know that you are a real MVP. For me, as you can tell, it's Nickel as a yellow, a Quin Rose or Quin Magenta depending on the brand, and Ultramarine Blue. I feel like with these 3 colors I can tackle anything. That said, I did add a lot of fun colors that I really enjoyed, and you know, colors that give me a bit of a spark. There are changes that I want to make to this palette, and I'll highlight them in a video coming later. So the next color that we have is, I guess, my slightly more affordable version of Piemontite, and that is Transparent Brown Oxide, which is PR101. As the name indicates, it is transparent. And again, I got it because it's a mixer color. For me, it sits in between burnt sienna and burnt umber when looking at the hue. It has some nice granulation. It makes beautiful grays, and it is transparent. So quite like it, because sometimes in comparison with some other browns, they can be a bit lackluster. Like, I like browns that have character, and this one I think does. And I also tend to like quite warm browns, so the browns that are burnt as opposed to the raw versions, so like burnt umber, burnt sienna, you know. Then next we have another color that I ran out of and topped up, and as you can see I'm running low on again, and that is Manganese Blue Hue, which is PB15. So PB15 is a phthalo blue. Normally it's like this super bright electric blue. It doesn't say that there's any white, but this is a lot lighter than the phthalo blue we would normally get. But the reason that I really like it is that, look at that, it's like the perfect sky blue off the bat, and because it is PB15 as opposed to a cobalt or a cerulean, it is transparent. So again, beautiful mixes with it, and it's just a beautiful, lovely sky. So I really like this this hue, this actual color. And then, so this one I need to clean up. I feel like maybe it's obvious, but I'm quite a messy painter when it comes to my palette. So I will mix, you know, I will mix colors, I will mix here. And I tried where possible to have this section of my palette be my warm colors and have this section of my palette be my cool colors. So my purples, my greens and my blues. Whereas this section I was using to mix my yellows, my peaches, so on and so forth. It comes down to personal preference. Like, I can see the benefit of having a clean palette. It means, you know, cleaner mixes, but equally I like colors that have a bit more character, as I've mentioned, and sometimes that comes from having a messy palette. And if you are using a limited palette, you in a way end up creating a mother color in the middle. Basically all the colors will have a hint of this mixture of all these colors that we have, and so sometimes it just makes it a bit more uniform. So again, it depends. If I want to make like the brightest of bright colors or the cleanest of clean colors, then I'll clean up my palette. I wrote down cobalt blue here. Ignore the typo that I have here. This is actually cobalt teal blue, which is PG50 and semi-opaque. Back in the day, this was the main color that I would actually use for my skies, but as you can see it compared to the manganese blue right next to it, it's a lot more green leaning, and so now it's a color that I reserve more so for mixing interesting greens and also for having it in my sea, but not as much in my skies. Next we have phthalo turquoise, which is PB15:3 and PG36, which is another type of phthalo green. And I mean, it makes a beautiful turquoise. And part of the reason that, you know, I advocate for learning a little bit about different pigments is that in knowing about them, you'll know like, oh, phthalo blue and phthalo green make phthalo turquoise. Even if you have a PG7, which is also a phthalo green, and you mix it with a phthalo blue, you will get a phthalo turquoise. And it just makes your possibilities a lot bigger, you know, like your mixing abilities and possibilities a lot bigger. I feel like it makes it a lot more fun because you'll have the secret recipes of all these beautiful colors. And I've made a video kind of talking about that and specifically highlighting how you can make some special granulating colors that look even better than the ones that are out there. Then next color that we have, and again, phthalo, this is another transparent color. The next one that we have is, I mean, this was a workhorse, the color that I finished the most times. I think I finished and replaced this 3 times. It was insane. And that is the true MVP of this palette, which is Ultramarine Blue PB29. And part of me, you know, it'd be nice to say I have like this super amazing, super special, super unique color that did most of the work. But actually, it was our run-of-the-mill, very commonly used ultramarine blue. It just made the most beautiful purples. It makes the most beautiful greens. It is beautiful even on its own. And so I have no complaints. It is wonderful. I do sometimes like to use Indanthrone Blue instead. The one thing is that Indanthrone Blue doesn't granulate, and that's why I like using it when I want to make nice, clean, uniform mixes. But because I was painting a lot of foliage, and just in general, I wanted like a little bit more granulation, ultramarine was just incredible. Also, it makes beautiful grays when mixed with either transparent brown oxide or Piemontite. So A1, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic color, and one of the cheapest colors out there. And then I have Undersea Green. I must admit, I didn't use this as much. I was mixing my own greens, but on reflection, I was actually making my greens by mixing Nickel Azo Yellow or Quin Gold with Ultramarine Blue. And if you mix Quin Gold with Ultramarine Blue, you get Undersea Green. So it may be that actually in part the reason that I didn't use this quite as much is because I was mixing my own version, although I didn't really think about it at the time. But basically, yes, I was mixing my own green, so I didn't use Undersea Green, but it's still a valuable color to have. It's just one of those beautiful colors that when you put down for foliage or backgrounds, it just does all the work for you. It just granulates beautifully. It looks nice and organic. And so it is a really lovely color. And then the other thing that you can do is, you know, you can always add a bit more ultramarine to make it lean more blue, or add a bit more Nickel Azo Yellow to make it lean more yellow, or add a bit more Quin Gold to make it look, you know, so you can really play around with colors even if they are pre-mixed, and that I enjoyed. And then the last color, which I used quite a bit but probably not as much as I thought, although as you can see I've like put a chunk on there because I did run low, is Moon Glow. So Moon Glow is made up of PG18, PB29 and PR177, and it is beautiful. And I must admit, it's a color that I heard a lot of people talking about and I got, but I wasn't like, I don't know, I kind of thought, oh, maybe it's overhyped, so I didn't really tend to use it very much. And then after a while I swatched it out more recently and I was like, you know what, this color is actually really nice. It's really nice. It's just sitting inside my box. I need to use it, and so I added it to my palette as a replacement for like a Payne's Grey kind of color, just so that it wouldn't be like a generic palette. Like I mentioned, it would have colors that I find fun and that I enjoy, and Moon Glow was one of them. Then the 2 extra colors that I added as bonus colors on half pans, which I wasn't 100% sure if I needed, and I didn't use quite as much as I thought I would, but I'm still glad I have them. Sap Green, this kind of speaks for itself. This is just a beautiful green. It is P048, PG7 and PY150. So essentially it is Quin Gold plus phthalo green, and I mean, it is stunning. And obviously with these, you know, with the pigments, you don't know exactly which version of the pigment or the ratios, but, you know, it gives you a starting point, which I quite enjoy. And then the next color is Sodalite Genuine. So it's a Primatech color. So again, no pigment information, but it is really, really nice. Gray blue. and I was determined to have interesting greys. As it so happened, I used a limited palette for a lot of my trip, and that's one of the other lessons that I kind of got from using this. I was using a limited palette because I wanted to leave room for expanding other skills. I didn't want to have to start thinking about new color mixes and new this and new that. And so I just wanted to know, okay, I'm using these colors I'm going to be using all the time, and maybe I can add a few extra colors for bonuses, but ultimately I can focus on other parts of my learning when it comes to my art journey. And I'm so glad I did that, because I think it made it a lot more fun, a lot more exciting, and I do like color mixing. So I highly recommend trying out just doing limited color palettes and seeing where that leads. So these are the colors that I have, and just to do a few mixes so that you can see, all these colors obviously here are mixes of in some way or shape or form. So we have like a peach kind of color that I quite often get by mixing Quin Gold with a little bit of Quin Rose, a bit more. And then I get like different like peachy tones, which I really enjoy. And then I also feel like because I can make a warmer color using that, it makes me feel like, again, I don't really 100% need a red, because I can make a warm orangey color without it. Then another mix that I really enjoy, like I mentioned, is, I'll do it like here in the corner, is Piemontite, and then adding some ultramarine blue, and I'll take some more Piemontite. And as you can see, just really nice, interesting dark colors. Same with like, if you add a bit more Piemontite and you add a bit of Quin Rose, then we start getting into nice, deep, dark, interesting, moody purple colors. If I take my ultramarine blue and take some of that nickel azo yellow and then add a bit of Quin Gold, you can see I'm getting some nice natural looking greens. And I mean, it goes on and on and on. But in terms of the colors that I was using back to back, I'll do like a little swatch of them on my limited palette. I was using nickel azo yellow, Quin Rose, Piemontite, manganese blue hue, and this I would add as a like addendum, only because like if I was painting skies, I was using this color. If I wasn't painting skies, I wasn't using it. So it's not that I was using it for mixes or anything. It's kind of like a bonus addendum. And then the MVP that I've already mentioned is ultramarine blue. So I did the vast majority of my paintings during this painting trip using just nickel azo yellow, Quin Rose and ultramarine. If I wanted to make a grey, I would add in Piemontite or sometimes transparent boron oxide, and then if there was a sky, I would just drop in manganese blue straight. And those are the colours that I pretty much used quite religiously to do a lot of the paintings that I'm going to highlight here. And this palette is what taught me a lot of lessons. I feel like one of the main lessons was, again, because I was focusing, because I knew the colors that I was using, and I was thus able to focus on other parts of my learning when it came to the painting. I just felt like I was able to learn a lot more and to experiment a lot more with other things. It also really taught me about the colors that I was drawn to, because ultimately I found that, you know what, I like transparent colors. I like warm yellows, I like natural greens, and I like the colors that I'm able to make from just this very limited palette. Those lessons I was then able to carry over to the other palettes that I created. Just wanted to highlight the palette itself. So it's relatively smaller than the ones that you tend to see like online that look like the same design. But the key reason that I got this palette is that quite often I tend to have half pans or full pans, and I still love and use them. But I found that as I am painting bigger and bigger and using bigger brushes, it's just trickier to, you know, to get them into my half pans. I also didn't want to like keep digging in with my nice watercolor brushes, and so I opted for a pan that had this kind of setup so that I could pour in my watercolors and know that I could quite gently take the colors out of the pans without damaging my nicer brushes. So it was an intentional decision because my aim wasn't to do lots of urban sketching and plein air painting per se. It was to paint more in the studio, do larger paintings, use nicer materials and enjoy the process. So that's why I picked this. Obviously it comes with a lot of pros and cons. Pros being that, like I said, it's more gentle on your brush and you can pick out the colors that you want and put them in. Cons being that you can't use your half pans or you know, your half pans or full pans as you normally would, and also it's just harder to replace the colors once they're in there, you know, unless you want to be wasteful, you pretty much have to finish using them. Anyway, that's like a by the by about the palette itself, in case you were wondering. I will link it or something similar down below in the description. Now that I've highlighted the colours that I have in my palette, I just wanted to take a moment to show the limited colours that I decided to choose, like the limited palette. One of the ways that I was exploring them as well is by doing this exercise where I essentially just swatched out the colours very messily. Here I have Nickel as a Yellow, Quin Rose and Ultramarine. And then for this one, I actually used cool colours. So I used Hansa Yellow, Quin Rose and Phthalo Turquoise and just mixed them in a very messy, straightforward, low pressure way. The reason that I did this is that quite quickly by looking at it, I can see the different types of colors that I can mix using those three colors. So it gives me a lot of information. It doesn't have to be like super detailed or super precise, and I can quite quickly look at it and be like, okay, which trio do I prefer? And for me, the trio that I preferred was Nickel as a Yellow, Quin Rose and Ultramarine. And this is kind of where I decided that actually this was the trio that I was going to use primarily for the next few days, and then it ended up being weeks of my art journey. And then if I wanted to add extra colors, I could, but my primary colors that I was using were those ones. And this is also one of the things that I kind of highlighted in more detail in a watercolor challenge that I've created. In it, I highlighted not only the essentials of watercolors, but most importantly, my favorite parts, the things that make watercolor more enjoyable, but also some of the things that perhaps I was a bit stuck on before that now I just have a bit of a better understanding. And since then, my paintings have drastically improved. One of the other things or other ways that you can also apply this easy technique is in things like this, where here I was specifically mixing greens with different yellows and different blues to again see the kind of wide range that I can get from it. It doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be boring in order for it to be helpful and to make a difference in your artwork. All of these experiments led to these paintings and more. I'll create a separate video where I'll do a sketchbook tour sharing more of the paintings that I created during this art retreat. It was a wonderful retreat hosted by Tom Shepherd, and I just feel like I learned so much and I left feeling so inspired as a result of it. But as I say, the painting didn't stop there. It didn't stop with the art retreat. I just continued and I just kept painting more and more and more and more, and even now it hasn't stopped. I've just come back from a little solo art trip that I took myself on, and on there I painted like 30 paintings, again using the lessons that I've learned, using the colors that I've picked, and I feel like my art is better for it. It's been a lot of boats, like all the boats that you're seeing in these series, boats and coasts that you're seeing more recently, they're all leaning into using just a limited palette of colors that I enjoy, and I love all of them. As you can see, they are all used and well loved, and I hope that you found this helpful. I definitely feel like I learned a lot from my Daniel Smith palette, from using the colors, using the strengths of those colors, and then applying it to future palettes that I got, including this next one where I got my Sennelier watercolors. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye and God bless.